Okay, so let's look at functions, and we want to determine whether each relationship is a function. And by definition, before we get started, a function is an input, output relationship that has exactly one, I'm going to use the number one for space, one output for each input. So that's the actual definition of a function. And so in short terms, it means for each one of my inputs here, I can only have one output. So if I'm going to use, and this is called a mapping, so when we have this type of function or representation of a possible function, this is called mapping. Okay, so we're going to use mapping to determine whether or not this is a function. So again, we're going to go ahead and label. So this is our input, and this is our output. I kind of have to put it on top of there. And so the input represents X, the output represents Y. And input is going to be our independent variable, and our output is our dependent variable. So when we look at the definition of a function, let's kind of explore and see if this is a function or not. So if we look at the input of 5, it's only mapped to 13. So it's mapped to only one output, so that's going to work. So let's look at the second one, 8. The input of 8 is mapped to the output of 13. That's okay, it's a one-to-one relationship. Then we look at 4, it is mapped to 9 only, and so this one will work. And then our last one is the input of 2, and it's mapped to 9 only. So we have one input for every one output. Okay, if we say it the other way around, then for each one of these inputs, we have exactly one input. For this one input output, it's the same or has only one input. Okay, so because we have that one-to-one relationship, then that means that it is a function, because it has a one-to-one relationship. For each one of my inputs, there's exactly one output. Okay, so now let's move on to the second one that we have, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to look and see for our input. We're going to look at that input-output relationship. So that's our input, which represents X. Our output represents Y. Okay, so if we look at our first input, which is 5, it's mapped to only 9, so this one will work. Then we move on to 8. 8 is mapped only to our output of 13, so that one's okay. Then we get to 4. 4 is mapped to 9, but we also see that 4 is mapped to 13. So this is, for this one input, there's actually, what, 2 outputs. So we want to know, because it's a 1-to-2 relationship, that this is not a function. Okay, so it is not a function. Okay, because we have a 1-to-2 relationship. Excellent.